Hi guys, it's Heather with Running with Scissors, and in this month's In the Box, we are making this macrame wall hanging with wood sola flowers. Now you can see on this one, I fringed the tail ends, which you will learn to do at the end of the tutorial. However, you can also leave them straight, as you will see in the picture on the instructions. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so let's see what's included in our February kit for It's in the Box. So you'll have instructions, which I don't have in mine, but you will have. You're also going to find a two-sided bingo card. We are going to play a game of St. Patrick's Day bingo, so watch the VIP group for the date that that's going to be posted. All right, we're just going to play for fun and probably some little prizes, but we don't have all those details worked out yet. Okay, so in your box, you're going to have a big length of tied macrame cord. So this is all one piece in most cases. Some of you may have gotten a couple of separate pieces, but I tried really, really hard to make sure that it was all one length for everyone. You're also going to find 3 Sola wood flowers. Now, not everyone has the same shape. Not everyone has the same sizes, okay? There's going to be 3 varying wood Sola flowers. You're going to have a bag with a baby wipe in it. You're going to have a tape measure, a fabric tape measure. You have 4 small containers of paint. You'll have brown or chocolate. You have sweater weather, you have divine wine, and you also have a woodland sage. You have a flat brush, 1 white wedge, 1 small super glue, and then you have your wood pieces. You have the word welcome, and you have the half circle, okay? So you will need a pair of scissors and a hot glue gun. Oh, well, you also have a hot glue stick. So you will need a pair of sharp scissors, preferably fabric scissors, ones that you have not cut a ton of paper with, because they will be sharper to cut the macrame cord, and a hot glue gun. And I'll let you know when to plug your hot glue gun in. Okay, so you may want to hold on to your pizza box, the box that your stuff came in there, because you'll be mixing a little bit of paint down the road, and that will be handy. But otherwise, we are going to get started. Now, I'm going to change the camera angle, and you won't see me, yay you. You're going to be just looking down at my surface, because it's going to be a lot easier for you to be looking down at what I'm doing than just looking at me and the table. So, good times. All right, let's get going. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to paint our wood pieces so we can get them done and move them to the side and start on everything else. We want these to get finished and dried because we will need them for the cordage part. So I'm going to take the baby wipe out of the bag, and I'm just going to fold it up around a couple of fingers, and I'm going to take my brown paint, my milk chocolate paint, and I'm just going to put a little bit on the baby wipe, and then I am going to wipe it onto the board. So I am staining the board with the brown paint. I don't want a full coverage, I just want it to appear like it is stained. And so the baby wipe kind of waters the paint down, and it makes it look like we're staining it. All right, and that's it for this piece here. So we're just going to move that to the side, and we're going to paint our word and our flowers. So if I would decide how you want to paint these. Now your solo wood flowers do not have to be painted at all if you don't want them painted. That's up to you. But I want some color in my sign, my little macrame sign here. So I'm gonna put some color in. I'm gonna paint the welcome word with the Divine Wine color paint, and I'm gonna use the white wedge. And I'm just gonna dip the wedge in the paint, and then I'm gonna dip off. I'm gonna dip off on the side. I have a little plate over here, so I'm not making a mess all over my table cover. And then with the wedge, I'm just going to pounce that paint onto the word. Now the first coat is gonna be airy. You're gonna see wood through it. It's not gonna look completely covered, and that's okay. We're gonna put 2 or 3 coats on this, and we're gonna let each coat dry fully before we put the next on. If you don't let your paint dry all the way, all you're going to do is pull the semi-dry paint off when you go to put that next coat on, and then it's gonna look splotchy, and you don't want that. So just wait for it to dry. It only takes a second. If you're very impatient, you can have a hair dryer on standby, and you can dry it with a hair dryer really quick. But I made it to the end of my W, and my E is already dry, and half of my M, so that just shows you it does not take very long. So we will just give that a second, and then we will put a second coat on it. All right, my first coat is dry, so I'm gonna go ahead and put my second coat of paint on. Two coats might do it. You'll have to decide once your second coat is fully dry if it looks like it's covered enough for you. And if it is, then don't worry about another coat. That will be plenty. All right, I'm gonna set this to the side and let it dry. And while it dries, I'm gonna start on my flowers because I feel like 2 coats is enough. And so I think I'm just going to move on, and I'll revisit that if it needs a 3rd coat, just down the line a little bit here. All right, now I also have a cup of water ready to rinse my paintbrushes, and also that cup of water will come in handy to thin down your paints for your solo wood flowers just a little bit. Now you can use this Sweater Weather paint to tint the colors of your other paints if you would like, to lighten them up a little bit, to give you a little bit of a variety on your flowers. I'm going to paint one of my flowers with the Divine Wine. I'm going to paint one with the Woodland Sage. And then I'm going to lighten one up, I think, or actually maybe not. Maybe I'll just leave it white. It might look really nice white. I think I'm actually gonna leave this big one just unpainted. And I'm gonna paint these 2 smaller ones with the Divine and the Woodland. So let's get going on that. I'm gonna paint this medium-sized one with the Woodland Sage paint. And now to do that, I have a plate off to the side here, and I'm just going to put a little bit of the paint onto my plate. Just a couple paintbrushes full, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of water and water this paint down just a little bit. I dip my brush like 3 times in the water. And I just want to thin this out just a little bit. Our paint is really, really thick, and to paint these wood flowers, you kind of want your paint on the thinner side. A lot of people dip them, which is fine. You could dip them as well, but they take a long time to dry, and I really love the look of them actually painted. All right, so here we go. I'm just gonna hold this in my hand, and with my flat brush, I'm gonna come in and get my paint in there. Now they are very, very thin. They're very fragile. So you will have to take some care when you paint them. The good news is that if you are good on your coverage the first time around, You will not have to paint them a second time. Now, if you do want to dip your flowers, because you have more time to let them dry than I have to let them dry in a video, you can take a small, like a fingertip bowl, like maybe like a little ramekin, and you can put some water in it with your paint and thin your paint right down, and then you can dip your sola flowers into it. You can just take a toothpick or a skewer or even a plastic fork and push it into the back to hold on to the flower, and then take that and dip that right down in to the ramekin if you would like to. We have done them both ways. Painting is tedious. It does take a little while, but once again, I believe that the look of a painted flower is a much nicer than the look of a dipped flower. Now keep in mind, if you do plan on dipping, or they also call it dyeing, if you plan on dipping your flowers, you will need to put them on like a skewer or a toothpick and stick them in some styrofoam or something so that they can remain upright so that they can dry. You could also use a hair dryer to help dry them, but they still take a really long time to dry. I'm going to grab just a little bit more water. And thin your paint out as you feel it's needed. Don't feel like you're limited to only a couple of drops of water. Thin it as much as you need. Okay, so I don't want to put too much paint in here because I don't want it just to be all like globs of paint. I still want my petals to all be separated. So I'm going to call that good. It's all of the petals are covered. It's just way down deep into the where if you were to separate them all apart, where they all come together at the very bottom. That's the only part that's not covered completely. So I'm going to call that good. And I'm going to set that guy aside to dry, and I'm going to do my other one. So I'm going to have to rinse my brush out. So I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm going to grab my Divine. And I was just going to paint it this Divine color. However, I think that I'm going to mix a little bit of Sweater Weather in there to give it a different look. So let's do that. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so now I'm just gonna grab some water. I'm gonna start on the edge here so I know where the thinner paint is. All right, so my paint's thinned out a bit. And now I'm going to take my next flower, and I am going to just do the same thing. I'm going to get my brush down in there and paint it all up. Now on this one, I'm going to also do the outside of it. And the other one I didn't have to because that's more of a lay flat flower, but this one kind of sticks up and you would see it if I didn't paint the outside. So I'm going to paint the outside as well. This one's just a little guy, so he won't take very long. You want to make sure you get those edges too. Top edge there. And I'm just pushing my brush very gently down into there, which it's gonna mess the bristles of my brush up because of the things I'm forcing my poor paintbrush to do. But I don't plan on using this brush for anything else. Okay, and there we have it. We have this flower completely painted inside and out. Now you'll notice, and I'll talk about this later, this guy has quite the long stem on the back, and I am going to have to cut that down before I glue it on. So later you'll see, oops, I missed a spot there. You'll see me cutting that, trimming that down, and I'll talk about it then as well. But it's just too long to glue on, so we'll have to trim it. All right, we're gonna set that guy aside and let him dry. We're gonna check on our other one while we're here. Looks good. All right, so at this point you can clean up all your paint, because you are essentially done with it, unless you're going to paint your big flower. And in that case, if you're gonna paint the big flower, you're just gonna choose a color and you're gonna do it just like we did the other two. This one will take a little bit longer, or you could always dip them. And again, to dip them, you're just going to take a ramekin or something large enough to fit this flower into it. And you're going to put your paint in there with some water to water it down. And then you will put a toothpick or a skewer or a plastic fork in here to hold onto this. And you will dip it down into the water until it is coated. And then you'll have to let it dry, all right? So then you'll just have to tape it or do something that you can hold this flower. This flower can be held up so it can dry. You could also hair dry it, but it will take a little while. All right, we are gonna move all of this stuff to the side because we are done with it for now. My word did not need another coat. I'm happy with that, so I'm good. I'm gonna leave that. And I'm just gonna move all my flowers over so that they can spend some time drying while we work on the next portion of our box. Okay, so on your instructions, it does give you the lengths of rope or cordage that you need. However, we're gonna go over that right now as well. So the first thing that you're gonna want to do is you're gonna wanna untie this whole bundle, okay? And then find an end. And then just be careful that you lay this bundle out to the side so it does not get all tangled up. I'm not gonna promise you won't get tangles, you probably will, and then you'll have to untangle them. Open your tape measure, and you will see that it is a 60-inch tape measure, okay? Our first cord is going to be measured at 24, and this is gonna be our hanger. So we're gonna take our cord and we're gonna line it up to the end of our tape measure, and we're just gonna gently follow the tape down till we hit 24. And then we're gonna take our scissors, remember we want them to be sharp, and we're gonna cut that piece off. Now this is your hanger, okay? It did not need to be very long. And so I'm just going to put a little loop in it so I know that that was my hanger cord, and I'm gonna set it over with my wood piece. Now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cut 6 lengths of 58. 6 lengths of 58. Now you will have seen, there's a small chart on your instructions, and it shows you these numbers again, and it also shows you how the layout is. We'll get to that in a little bit, but we're gonna measure this all the way down to 58. And we're gonna cut 6 cords at 58. So right there is our 58, okay? We're gonna cut. Now, instead of working with my tape measure to measure the next 5, I'm gonna just hold these ends together and I'm gonna pull the cordage out until I hit the end, and then I'm going to cut it measured against the cord I just cut. So now I have 2 at 58, and I'm gonna keep doing this until I have 6. So I need 4 more. No matter what, that's gonna get tangled up. But there's not a ton of cord there, so it won't take you forever to untangle it. Okay, there's my 6 at 58. So I'm going to set those to the side. Now, if you want, you can take a little piece of paper and write, you know, the number 58 and stick it with them, or you can just put them in order in a row, so you know it's going to go largest to smallest. All right, now I need 2 at 48, 46, 44, 40, 38, and 36. So first I'm going to do my 2 at 48. Once again, I'm just gripping the end of the cordage with the end of the tape measure, and I'm gonna pull down until I hit my 48 measure. There it is. Now I'm just gonna bend it, and I'm gonna hold it with my thumb and my finger tight and work my way down the cord, both of them together, until I hit the end, and then I'm gonna cut, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna cut that bend. So these are my 2 at 48, and I'm gonna lay those right alongside my 58. I'm just gonna go in a row. I'm going in a row like this, largest to smallest. Next is 46. I want 2 at 46. I'm gonna do the same thing. 2 at 46. Here's my 46. I'm going to bend it, come back, trim it where the ends come together, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna cut that bend apart, and then I'm gonna lay both of these right alongside of my 48. Now I am on my 44s. I need 2 44s. Same thing, same process. Here's my 44. Mark it and bend it. There's the end, trim it. Come back and cut the loop. Now I am on 40. no matter what, you're gonna just get this tangled. It's just gonna happen. So you'll just have to unravel it. There's my 40. Oops, I forgot to fold it there. Well, I had a knot anyway here, so now we'll measure it against the first one that we just cut at 40, and we'll trim that end. I'm gonna lay those right alongside the 44s. And now we're on our 38s. We need 2 38. And my 38 mark, bend it. Trim, and then cut the bend apart. And then line those up next to the 40. All right, now we are on the 36, and you can see there's not much string left over. It's because we measured these out pretty exact. So you don't want to guess, you actually want to measure, or else you will not have enough cordage. There's my 36, gonna bend, bring it down, and then I'm going to trim it off. This is all the extra that we had, just that little bit there. So make sure you measure correctly. All right, now comes the fun part. Okay, you can take your tape measure and set that aside. You will not need that anymore today. However, you can keep it because it will come in handy for other things down the road, I'm sure. Even just around the house, but you can put it in your craft kit. All right, we're gonna take our template, our wood backer board piece, and we're gonna start with the furthest left in your rows of cordage. These are the 6 pieces at 58. Now you can look at your instructions with the chart there, and it shows you how you're gonna place all these cords. But we're gonna put all 6 of the 58 ones in the middle, okay? All we need to worry about right now, though, is putting them on the board. And we will worry about getting them in the middle in a minute. So what you're going to do is you're going to take one strand of your 58 and you're going to bring the ends together. Once you got the ends together, you're going to run the string down till you get to the end of the where it folds and loops, okay? Now we're going to do a lark's head knot on this. And quite often you will hear me refer to a lark's head knot as cow hitching. You have cow hitched many, many times in your sub boxes if you've been with us since the beginning, but it's very easy to do. We're gonna take the knot, the loop, we're gonna put it underneath, and we're gonna pull that loop up through the slot, okay? Then we're gonna take both ends and we're gonna push them up through that loop, just like that. And then we're gonna tighten that down. That is a lark's head knot, also known as cow hitching. Okay, now we're gonna do that 5 more times because we have 6 of these. Once again, put the ends together and stretch it out till you have where it is folded over. You're going to put the fold underneath and bring that loop up through the slot. Just bring it up a little bit, then take your 2 ends that are together and you're gonna put them through that loop and pull, and then tighten that down. And again, we're gonna do this 5 more times. Okay, all 6 of my 58-inch cords are on there, but now I want to center those 6 between the hanger holes, okay, or in the middle. So I'm just going to slide them over and straighten them up. And I'm going to make sure that they're all tight, that the knot is as close to the bottom rail as possible without breaking anything. I don't want to put any shear up power in it or anything like that. Just want to snug it up there. Now we're going to take the next set of cordage. This one should be to the immediate right of what your 58 inches were. These are the 48-inch cords. And we're going to take one at a time. And we're going to do the same exact thing we just did. However, we're going to put one on the left and one on the right of this set of 6, okay? So the first one I'm going to start, I'm going to put it on the left. And I'm just going to loop it through just like I did all those other ones. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one, except I'm going to put it on the right. Okay, there we go. So now we have 8 cords on there. The middle 6 are the 58. The next ones are the 48. So now I'm going to grab the next set, which are the 46-inch cords. And I'm going to do the same thing, one on each side. Now, do you see a pattern here? You're going to repeat it with all of the remaining groups of 2 cords, working from one side to the other. So one cord goes on the left, one cord goes on the right, until all 18 cords are on the rail. All right, so let's work through that. I'll avoid all the commentary so we can make this go a little bit faster. Here we go. Okay, all 18 of my cords are on my backer board. Now I just want to position their spacing so it's equal. This doesn't have to be super, you don't have to be super crazy about this. I just want to spread these out so that the spacing seems a little bit better than it was. I want it to be even as much as I can. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. All right, so now here comes the fun part. All right, so we're going to work from left to right, and we're going to just be making square knots. If you've never tied a square knot is left hand over right hand, and then right hand over left hand. Okay, so let me show you. Left hand over the right hand, and then we're going to bring that left hand strand, what was the left hand strand, down and around up through the loop. Okay, and then now the strand that's in my right hand goes over the left hand strand, and then we bring that strand around and through the loop. Okay, that's a square knot. See that? So you can tell if you've done a square knot correctly by, you can take both pieces and push them forward and the knot will just kind of separate. You see it separating? That's a square knot. Okay. Now if you've done friendship bracelets when you were a kid, so if you're like, I don't know, anywhere from your mid 30s to late 40s or early 50s, I'm sure you've made these friendship bracelets. So I'm going to try to make this as easy as possible on you. And your advantage here is that you're watching a video, so you can pause it and go back and rewind and look at it again to make sure that you're doing it correctly. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our left 4 strands. So that's strand 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? They go right in order. You can see that I don't have my cords twisted at all. I'm going to take strand number 1, the farthest left, and I'm going to make like a 4. So it's shaped like a 4, right? Across these 3 strands, strands 2, 3, and 4. Then I'm going to take strand 4, and I'm going to pull it up. It's going to go over top of that tail part. Make sure that you're in camera here. So it's going over top of that, and then I'm going to lift these up, and it's going to go underneath and up through the center of that 4. Okay. Now I'm just going to try and hold these strands down with my thumb, and I'm going to tighten the knot at the top. Okay. So I did the left hand side, which was the 4. Now I have to do the right hand side, which is a P, or a backwards 4. So now we're gonna make the P. We're gonna take this left handmost strand. It's gonna lay over top of that tail. We're gonna pull these pieces up, and we're gonna pull that strand up through the middle of the P. And then once again, I'm gonna put my thumb on these strands just to hold them down, and I'm going to tighten this knot up against the first knot, okay? So that is your knot there. This strand is done. Now we're just gonna push those 4 pieces to the side, and we're gonna pull the next 4 pieces down, and we're gonna do the same thing. So let's just move all of these cords to the side here so we're not messing with them, and we're only focusing on our 4 strands at a time. All right, so we have our 4 strands. We're gonna make our 4. We're gonna take our 4th strand, we're gonna lift it over top of that tail there, and then we're gonna go underneath everything and up through the middle of the 4. Okay, so now we've got the knot, and we're gonna tighten it down, holding down those 2 strands. Now you can hang this from a hook or something if you think it would make it easier to not work on a flat surface. But for you guys, I have to work on a flat surface so you can see what I'm doing. All right, now we're gonna make the P. And again, this is over top of the tail. We're gonna lift all of this up, and we're gonna pull that strand through the middle of the P, and we've got our knot, and we're gonna hold down, and we're gonna tighten. Okay, so the second set of 4 is done. We're gonna move those to the side, and we're gonna pull down the next set of 4, and we're going to repeat this process until we have 9 knots. All right, 9 knots. You're gonna work your way through all of these, one section of 4 at a time. Okay, here we go, and I'm gonna stop talking, and I'm just gonna do this, and I'll probably speed the video up a little bit so you're not sitting and watching it all. Set of knots here, my last 4 strands. So just as I've done the entire time here, I'm gonna do this the exact same way. Okay, so this is what it looks like with our first row of knots done. Now we are going to start our second row of knots. So to make it the easiest throughout this whole entire thing, after you finish an entire row of knots, I'm gonna have you take the left 2 strands and flip them up and out of the way because you are done with those, all right? And the right 2 strands, and you're gonna flip them up and out of the way because you're done with those as well. So now we're gonna focus on the remaining strands, and we're going to do the exact same thing we just did with the 4 strands of cord and working from the left. Now the only difference is we've eliminated 2 strands, okay? So now we're going to work from the left with the left 4 cords that we have remaining. Remember, these 2 strands are up and out of our way. We're done with them. We're not going to touch them again. So now we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to make our 4. We're going to take our 4th strand and come up through the middle of the 4. We're going to hold this down and we're going to tighten it down. Now we're going to make our P, and we're going to come up through the middle of our P. We're tying our square knot right around those center 2 strands. Okay, now there is our completed knot. We're just going to move those to the side, and we're going to start with the next set of 4 strands. All right, make sure you don't have them crossed. You don't want them crossed. Make your 4. And then bring the other one up through the middle of the 4 around the 2 center strands. Tighten it down. And then make your P and do the same thing. All right. Nice and tight down. Okay. Now we're going to continue with all the strands that are down. Make sure that you don't do those 2 ends. I'm just going to move these to the side. I'm going to grab the next 4 strands. I'm going to go quiet so we can make the video portion of this speed up just a little bit. But I'm going to work through the remaining strands that I have. Okay, here are my last 4 for this row. So I'm going to finish this set of knots off. Okay, so now I have 2 rows of knots. You can see 2 rows, the top row and the bottom row. And my 2 strands from either my left and my right, from both my left and my right side, are still up. Now I've got to do another row of knots, but I'm going to take my 2 most outer strands of this row and I'm going to flip them up to join the first set of 2. So now we're going to have 4 strands on the left and 4 strands on the right that are pulled to the top that we're not going to use. We're eliminating 2 strands every time we do a row so that our rows are decreasing by 2 knots, or by 1 knot, I should say. Okay, now we're going to grab the next 4 strands from the left, and we're going to do the same thing. Okay, that finishes out that row. So once again, I'm going to take the outer 2 strands of each side and flip them up because I do not want to use them. And I'm going to repeat the knot process with the remaining strands for this next row. Hopefully by now you've settled into a little bit of a routine and you kind of got your game on and you know what you're doing here, so you don't have to think too much about it. Okay, there's yet another row done. It's getting faster and faster because we're doing less knots in the row. We're going to take the right 2 and the left 2 strands, flip them up, get them out the way, and then we're going to do the next row of knots. Okay, there's our row. We're going to take the right 2 strands, up and out of the way, the left 2 strands, up and out of the way. Okay, that's that row. Again, right 2 up and out of the way, left 2 up and out of the way. Now we're just going to make our row of knots from what we have left here. Okay, once again, right 2, left 2, and then we've got the remaining strands here. We're going to make 2 more sets of knots. Okay, so now we finished the 2 knots in that row. Now the same thing, we're going to take our left 2 and our right 2 strands, and we're going to flip them up. And now all that leaves us with is 4 strands, and 4 strands can only make 1 knot. So this is our very last knot. So we're going to do this the exact same way we've done all the other knots. And that is it. Look at how spectacular that is. So now we want to bring all these strands down, and you have a couple of options here. You can cut this off straight, make it as long as you want it. You can cut it short. You can go to the very last strand and then cut it off straight with the rest of those. You can cut it on a diagonal, however you want to finish it. The way that I'm going to finish it is I'm going to cut it straight across, but I want it to be as long as it can be. So I'm going to cut it wherever my shortest strand is. All right, so that happens to be right. Now it might be easier to hang it and cut it, and I might have to trim it once I get mine hung, but because of the video, I have to have mine flat. So I'm going to cut them all right about here with the rest of these. And again, I'm gonna probably have to trim it once I get it on the wall because they won't be straight across. But I'm gonna do my best for video's sake. Now would be a good time to get your hot glue gun plugged in while you're trimming. So maybe go plug that in and then start your trimming. All right, there's all of my cords trimmed off. Now the next thing that I want to do, well, you have to make a decision. Are you gonna leave them like this, or are you gonna fray them? You can take and unravel these, and if you have a plastic comb, if you've been within the box for a while and you saved your plastic comb from the last macrame project we did, then you can use that. But what all you would do is unravel all of these strands, which this would take a little while, but the look is very unique. And you can take a plastic, once you get these separated, you can take a plastic comb and you can brush these strands out. And I will show you that in just a second here. All right, so that's this unraveled, one strand unraveled. And so now we can take a plastic comb and we can comb those out. I just have a cheap plastic comb that I got at the dollar store. And all I'm gonna do is gently brush all these strands apart, or comb all these strands apart. And then you would just have to do that with every strand. It definitely gives a different look to the macrame. I believe I find it easiest to twist these long pieces. Actually, you're untwisting these long pieces and separating the 3 strands that make up one strand. So you get it like this and then comb through that. So I'm not going to do all of these right now. I'll do them and I'll show it to you what it looks like either way. But let's go and finish the top of it here. Okay, so you've had your glue gun plugged in for a minute, and let's take our piece that we set off to the side that was our hanger, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to put each end through the front towards the back. I'm going to decide how long I want that hanger to be, and then I'm just going to take the back and I'm going to make a couple of knots. Just a quick knot. I'm going to do 2, and I'm going to pull that forward. Once again, I'm going to decide how long I want this, which is about right there. I'm going to flip it over, and then holding that spot where it was the length I wanted, I'm going to put a knot in there as well. Second knot. And then pull it forward, and there's my hanger. Now we've got to get our welcome on there, so I'm going to use the super glue. Now you have a little tube in your kit, which I'm not going to use the one in mine because we have hundreds of tubes of super glue here already open. But to tap this, all you do is screw that little red cap onto it, and then it will be tapped from that red cap, and you'll just squeeze a bit out. So you're going to take the wood and put a small line of super glue through the center of the letters. Careful not to get too close to the edges and not too heavy, because it will squish out. Now if you get too much, just dab it off on your pizza box or on a napkin so you don't have too much. You're going to flip that over and position it on your backer board, and pressure activates super glue, so apply some pressure to it. And there you go. Now we're going to glue on our wood flowers using our hot glue gun. And you should have received a hot glue stick in your kit, but I'm sure you have tons of them lying around. So you're going to decide where you want your flowers. Maybe just dry fit them in here till you get it where you want. Now remember, I said this flower backer was too big and I was going to have to trim it, so I am going to do that now. Okay. I'm going to do mine just like that. So I'm going to put some wood or some hot glue on the back of my flower, and of course I'm running out of hot glue, but I knew that and I brought another stick along. I will take a little bit of hot glue here, but remember, hot glue is hot and your burn will burn for 24 hours, no less, no more. And now I'm going to hold that in place for a second. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other two. And there you go. There is your welcome macrame hanger. And I hope that you've learned some new and different crafting ideas and tips. All right, guys, make sure you post that on the VIP page. Thanks.